following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
Walt Disney's Disneyland. Each week as you enter this timeless land, one of these many worlds will open to you. Frontierland. Tall tales and true from the legendary past. Tomorrowland. Promise of things to come. Adventureland. The wonder world of nature's own realm. Fantasyland, the happiest kingdom of them all. Presenting this week,
Ladies and gentlemen, here is your host, Walt Disney.
Thank you, Garco. In this exciting age when everyone seems to be talking about the future possibilities of space travel, there's much speculation on what we will discover when we visit other worlds. Will we find planets with only a low form of vegetable life, or will they be mechanical robots controlled by super intelligent beings? One of the most fascinating fields of modern science deals with the possibility of life on other planets. This is our story.
In the beginning, man's world was his cave. His only concern was for food and companionship. With the sun came the day, bringing warmth and light. With the stars came the night, bringing darkness and fear. Later, when man became a shepherd, he spent more time contemplating the mystery of the stars. Because they moved, he believed them to be living things, possibly the children of the moon breaking away when the moon grew smaller. Then he noticed the reappearance of star formations he had seen before. Where had they come from, and where were they going? An important discovery. The stars fell into the sea. Man's conception of his world had expanded. The earth was an island floating in water, circled by a glittering ring of heavenly objects. As man learned to till the soil, he associated the stars with events of good and evil. When the bull was in the heavens, he planted his crops. This was good. Aquarius, the water carrier, brought the rains. This was also good. With the virgin of the harvest, the crops were gathered. This was very good. But Draco the dragon brought pestilence and famine. This was evil. Then man began to build cities with towers to bring him closer to the heavens. Man became an astronomer. He sought a more logical explanation for the earth and the heavens above. The earth, he thought, must be flat with its roots deep in celestial waters. In time, he changed the roots to stone pillars to afford easier passage for the stars in their nightly journey. Later, elephants were substituted because of their great strength. To support the elephants, he added a gigantic tortoise who pulled the universe through cosmic waters with infinite slowness. The Egyptians, who loved to draw, represented Earth as a reclining figure with a star-filled sky bending over the top. Shu, the god of air, kept them apart, while the sun and the moon sailed back and forth in a small boat. The Greeks were among the first learned men of astronomy. These great philosophers gave the world many profound conceptions of Earth and space. Plato said, "I have found the Earth to be the perfect shape of a cube, standing in the center of the universe, with all other heavenly bodies scattered round and about." Anaxagoras had this to say,
"Being in the center of the universe, the Earth is assailed by the rotating ether, which tears away bits of Earth, flinging them outward, setting them afire, creating stars and planets.
Then there was Aristarchus.
Gentlemen, I disagree. The sun is obviously in the center, with the Earth and other planets traveling in circular paths. And thus, the sun...
Finally, there was Ptolemy.
Learned men of science, I have listened to all your arguments. I now decree that our great Earth stands immovable as the hub of the universe, the supreme center of intelligent thinking.
Thus, Ptolemy's decree was blindly accepted as the law of science for over 1,000 years. Free and logical thought was stifled by a black period of stupidity, superstition, and sorcery. With the Renaissance came a learned monk, Nicholas Copernicus. He proved mathematically that the Earth was not the center of the universe, but was merely one of many planets circling the glowing sun. In 1610, Galileo published his Sidereus Nuncius, in which he vividly described the wonders of the heavens as seen through that great new invention, the telescope. The planets were not spots of light, but were spheres like the Earth. Jupiter had belts of color. Venus had phases like the moon. Saturn had a gorgeous ring, and Mars was round and red. People began to speculate about life on other worlds. One of the first to describe people of other planets was the romantic Frenchman, Bernard de Fontenelle. While walking with a young lady in a garden, he discusses with her the possibility of life on other worlds. She is delighted with the prospect of learning astronomy.
The sun is a boiling ball of liquid gold. The inhabitants cannot see these riches. They are blind. Mercury is so close to the sun that the people are crazy with the heat. Venus is the planet of passion. People do not cook because they live on air, music, and love. The men of Saturn are very cold and miserable. They never move from the spot where they are born. Jupiter is so big that people never see or meet other people. Mars is very populated with luminous birds who do not fly.
In Sweden, a philosopher's conception of life in our solar system revealed that the people of Mercury are very thin. They have tremendous memories. Their cattle are extremely small. The natives of Jupiter are pretty. They do not lie or steal, but they are terrified at the sight of their giant Jupiter-type horses. There are two kinds of people on Venus: mild people and fierce people. Inhabitants of Mars are clothed in fibers. They converse by means of thought transference. During the 19th century, Mars was more and more regarded as the planet most likely to harbor life, especially when astronomers thought they saw specks of light appear on the surface of the red planet. Many people believed that these were attempts to signal the Earth, and immediately plans were laid to build a gigantic mirror to return the friendly greetings. Later, Kurt Laswitz thrilled the world with his story about a crew of Earthmen who are captured by a magnetic Martian spaceship. The Earthmen are taken to Mars, where they are wined and dined on synthetic food. In a story by Robert Brain called Messages from Mars, a sailor is marooned on a lonely island off Madagascar. He discovers a rare and powerful telescope planet, which he immediately focuses on Mars. The Martians he sees are exactly 10 feet tall Their favorite culture is music, which they inhale in great quantities through their noses. As the 20th century dawned, H.G. Wells excited countless imaginations with his approach to life on Mars. In his War of the Worlds, he describes an invasion of the Earth by octopus-like creatures who are encased in giant fighting machines. With their heat rays and poisonous gases, they are quite invincible until they encounter the common germs in our atmosphere. Wells followed his science fiction story with a more serious discussion. He reasoned that plants would grow taller and thinner in the weaker gravity of Mars, and insects would probably be larger than those on Earth. The Martian animals, covered with fur or feathers during winter, would lose their covering with the coming of summer. The people of Mars would probably walk on their hind legs, their barrel-chested bodies covered with a coating of down. Their ample skulls would be crammed with intelligence, and their trunk-like noses indispensable for feats of engineering. Edgar Rice Burroughs supplied his readers with a complete Martian dictionary. Barsoomian, warlike people of Mars. Human bipeds with variegated color characteristics. Banth, Martian lion, dwells in Dead Sea areas, is carnivorous, has 10 legs. Kalat, a pony-sized Martian dog with a frog-like head. Thoat, a dog-sized Martian horse with about 8 legs. Martian plant man, half human, half plant, 10 feet tall, has one white ringed protruding eye. Through the years, there have been frequent rumors that Martians disguised as Earthmen walk amongst us. These stories are perhaps strengthened by the thousands of reports of unidentified flying objects passing in an endless procession across our skies. Today, a space-conscious public avidly consumes tons of story material about life on other planets. A typical cosmic soap opera usually begins at a very ultra-secret government space project. The hero is a young electronics genius who is always busy formulating new laws of thermodynamics and astrophysics. The heroine is his secretary, efficient, hardworking, and rather attractive. Of course, the villain is a mechanical robot from Mars. He is usually controlled by a Martian mastermind whose appearance is too horrible to reveal at this time. The escape device is a late-model electrophlegmatic flying saucer. The story plot usually concerns the lack of some precious element on Mars, such as water, or uranium, or women.
Take a letter, Miss Smith. Gentlemen, after due consideration and thorough calculation, it is my unequivocal opinion that there is absolutely no life on the planet Mars.
Today, as modern science seeks to understand the miracle of creation, it sees an infinite universe, cold and dark, inconceivably vast, without beginning, without end. Across this cosmic void, trillions of island universes move. In one of these, the Milky Way, our sun is but a tiny star among 300 billion other stars or suns. Scientists now estimate that 30 billion of these suns have captive planets. Since the laws of creation appear to be universal, it is almost certain that many of these planets harbor life. Life in the dawn of evolution. Life in the twilight of existence. Life where intelligence may have developed far beyond the stage of man. As an example of how the wonders of life may be evolving with infinite variation on other planets throughout the universe, let us follow the story of our own Earth from its misty beginnings. In the blackness of space, the faint pressure of starlight gradually compresses billions of tiny particles into a tremendous cloud of dust and gas. For millions of years, this cloud contracts with the growing pull of gravity until in the hot, glowing center, the sun is born. Swept into a flattened disk, whirlpools of heavy elements form the planets to circle in permanent orbits around the sun. The Earth begins to cool and shrink, its molten crust pouring out dense clouds of steam and carbon dioxide. In these primeval vapors, the stage of life is set. Steam condenses to rain. For centuries, great torrents of water tear at the rocky face of the Earth, creating the vast oceans. For centuries, rich salts and minerals are washed from the land and carried down to the sea. A billion years have passed. Now the warm primordial sea is the cradle of life. Here are gathered all the elements of nature from which life will emerge. One of these elements, found throughout the universe, is carbon, first link in the chain of living things. The carbon atom is unique, for it alone combines with itself and other elements in millions of intricate structures to form the complex molecules of organic compounds. In the slow course of time, some are transformed into proteins, the foundation of all life. These microscopic particles join with other elements to produce millions of delicate combinations. Most are destroyed, but a few of the strongest survive. Now, with time as the main ingredient, evolution of life is inevitable. Eventually, from the complex forces of nature, emerges the first organism, the first living cell, a microscopic speck of jelly able to grow and reproduce with great speed. As the eternal process of change continues, some cells group together in colonies, and from these evolve blue-green algae, the first primitive plants. In shallow pools, the chlorophyll of these plants converts the energy of sunlight into living tissue. For the first time, great quantities of precious oxygen are released, making possible ever higher forms of life. Ages roll by. The first minute cells of animal life appear, dependent on oxygen from the plants to survive. In the millions of centuries that follow, an infinite variety of plant and animal life begins to unfold. Endless adaptation, constant change, infinite variation through inconceivable lengths of time. At last, from the maternal sea, life emerges ready to challenge the hostile forces of a new environment. The pageant of living things spreads across the face of the land. Emerging during the last few seconds in the hour of time is man. Nature has created in man its most complex mechanism. The chemical processes that keep man alive are dependent on a never-ending supply of oxygen and constant body temperature. He automatically maintains an internal temperature of 98.6 degrees. But if prolonged exposure to severe heat or cold upsets his delicate balance by just a few degrees, man dies. Yet, given proper protection, man can carry on his everyday life within a temperature range of about 100 degrees. Nearly all plant and animal life as we know it exists within this same temperature span. There are some exceptions, however. Certain simple organisms, such as lichen, algae, and bacteria, can withstand more severe heat and cold. Broad as life's temperature range seems to us, it is nothing compared to the bitter cold and intense heat that mark the extremes of our solar system. At one end, the sun blazes at 10,000 degrees. Its radiant heat dissipates rapidly until after 1 billion miles we find the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, at temperatures of more than 300 degrees below zero. Here on Pluto, the distant sun glows but faintly over silent landscapes of frozen gases and lakes of liquid ammonia. Here, an Earthman would succumb in 15 seconds from the complete lack of oxygen, his body freezing solid in a few minutes. Moving nearer to the sun, we find Saturn. In spite of its majestic beauty, the poisonous atmosphere of ammonia and methane gas would be a death trap. Jupiter is closer to the sun, but is still intolerably cold at 200 degrees below freezing. Like Saturn, its air is poisonous. Again, man would quickly suffocate from lack of oxygen, his frail body torn by dense gases, blowing in gales up to 400 miles an hour. These outer planets are far too cold and hostile for life as we know it. On the other hand, if man should visit Mercury, the planet closest to the sun, he would find it much too hot for life to exist. Mercury is a small and airless world, with one burning face turned always to the sun. Man's blood would boil in this vacuum, and his lifeless body would be incinerated in seconds. As we move away from the sun toward the Earth, we enter the temperature zone favorable to life. In this golden zone are the orbits of Venus, Earth, and Mars. There may be life on Venus, but we know very little about our sister planet, for her mysteries lie shrouded beneath an impenetrable mantle of dense clouds. Beyond the Earth, at the outer fringe of life's temperature zone, is Mars, the third planet in our solar system where life could exist. Even though scientists think Martian conditions are severe, they believe that if man journeyed to Mars, he could survive here with moderate protection. He would need his own oxygen supply and some sort of protective covering. But life could be almost normal within pressurized houses and pressurized cities. Today, as we face the serious problems of overpopulation and depletion of natural resources, the possibility of Mars becoming a new frontier is of increasing importance in our plans for the future. What evidence do we have that Mars is a planet where life could exist? To answer this, we must search through the archives of astronomy. Here we find that from earliest history, Mars has been an object of great interest. To the ancients, Mars was only a wandering bright light in the sky. It was the blood-red symbol of war. But to Galileo, the first man to see it through a telescope, Mars appeared as a glowing red disk where sometimes a shadow appeared on one side. As telescopes improved, astronomers began to notice mysterious markings, which they carefully recorded with drawings. Each decade brought new discoveries. It was found that Mars rotated on its axis like the Earth. It had white spots at the north and south poles. The dark areas seemed to be permanent shapes. In 1781, astronomer Sir William Herschel, using a telescope of large proportions and increased accuracy, discovered that the white polar caps of Mars increased during the Martian winter and decreased with the coming of summer. By 1840, interest in Mars had mounted to the point where the first crude map was attempted outlining the areas thought to be continents and seas. Then, one clear night in 1877, Giovanni Schiaparelli made an historic observation. He saw the surface of Mars crisscrossed with a network of lines which seemed to connect the dark areas. He called them canali, or channels. The American astronomer Percival Lowell was so intrigued by Schiaparelli's findings that he built an observatory in Arizona dedicated primarily to the observation of Mars. Over a period of 20 years, Lowell and his assistants kept a nightly vigil whenever Mars was in the sky. A very important clue in the Martian mystery was uncovered by Lowell. When the polar caps increased in the fall and winter, the dark blue-green areas turned a brownish purple and grew fainter. With the coming of spring and summer, the polar caps receded. The blue-green areas gradually appeared again. This led Lowell to believe these regions must be great expanses of vegetation, irrigated by the melting snows of the ice caps. Lowell theorized that this was accomplished by the large network of canals. He realized that it was impossible to see a clear picture of Mars because of the disturbing movement of the Earth's atmosphere. Nevertheless, he maintained that the canals appeared too symmetrical and well organized to be accidental. Lowell concluded Mars to be a dying planet inhabited by intelligent beings who, with their giant network of waterways, were fighting a desperate battle for survival. Many of Lowell's interpretations of what he saw on Mars have been questioned by other astronomers. Some observers claim that the canals are only optical illusions, which if seen up close would break up into natural formations. There have been other mysteries to puzzle astronomers. Recently, an observer saw a bright flare of light suddenly appear and then slowly fade away. Was this an atomic explosion or a volcanic eruption? Or was it some sort of interplanetary signal? No one can say. In 1954, observers found that a new green area about the size of Texas had emerged from the red desert during one Martian season. Is this a new section opened up to irrigation by intelligent beings, or merely a natural phenomenon? Then there was a peculiar W-shaped cloud that over a period of months formed every day during the Martian afternoon. Was it another signal, or was it only a Martian dust storm? Today in Flagstaff, Arizona, the observatory established by Percival Lowell is actively engaged in a modern program of Martian research. The large 24-inch refracting telescope still plays an important role in solving the puzzle of Mars. A member of the observatory staff for 50 years is the senior astronomer, Dr. E.C. Slifer, who is considered to be one of the world's foremost authorities on the planet Mars.
Whether or not there is life on Mars is pure speculation. Before we imagine our neighbor as a planet teeming with super-intelligent beings and exotic plants, let us first consider some of the facts about Mars that astronomers generally agree on. We know that Mars moves in an elliptical path around the sun, and it takes a little less than 2 Earth years to complete the trip. Since Mars travels almost twice as slow as the Earth, we can only observe the planet close up every 2 years. Mars occasionally comes as near as 35 million miles. We know also that Mars is about half the size of Earth, and its gravity is 1/3 as strong. Like the Earth, Mars rotates, and its day is approximately a half-hour longer than our own. It has 2 tiny moons which revolve about the planet at great speeds. Also, like the Earth, its axis is tilted, creating the seasons of spring, summer, fall, and winter. In speculating about life on Mars, we must consider these 3 important factors: its air, its temperature, and its surface features. To roughly determine what sort of air Mars has, we use a spectrograph. This instrument simply breaks the light received from Mars into a band of colors like a rainbow. By analyzing this spectrum picture, astronomers find that the Martian atmosphere is quite different from that of the Earth. It probably consists mostly of nitrogen and a small amount of carbon dioxide with little or no free oxygen. The temperature of Mars is given by the thermocouple, an instrument so sensitive it can measure the heat of a candle 40 miles away. It tells us that the temperature of Mars sometimes reaches a balmy 85 degrees during the day, but drops to 95 degrees below zero in the coldest part of the night. There's a certain amount of guesswork about the surface of Mars. We can see that it's a rosy orange color with patches of darker green. But what causes this coloring, we are not sure. These bright regions could be dry, sandy deserts like our Sahara. Light from Mars is too faint to obtain an instantaneous photograph. An exposure time of at least 1 second must be used. Unfortunately, this isn't fast enough to keep the movement of the Earth's atmosphere from blurring the final photo. For this reason, photographic proof of the Martian canals has never been obtained. With the meager information that has been accumulated over a period of years, astronomers cannot draw too many definite conclusions about Mars. We realize there are probably certain unavoidable errors in our calculations, any one of which could make a big difference as to whether or not there is life as we know it on Mars.
Although scientific evidence seems to indicate that Mars is a cold, desolate world, many scientists today speculate on what the planet might be like if conditions were somewhat different. With a little more water and oxygen than expected, there could be an astonishing array of life on Mars. A totally different sequence of living things following its own pattern of evolution. There may be plant life that migrates in search of richer soil. There may be plants that feed on other plants. Or even plants that feed on themselves. And if animal life has developed on Mars, it too may have taken many new and unexpected forms. There could be animals with heavy insulation to conserve body heat in the sub-freezing night. Or perhaps the bitter surface conditions have driven some life underground to develop in a dark, mysterious environment. If it is true that there are dust storms on Mars, life could have evolved ways of protecting itself. On the other hand, there might be creatures that actually thrive on the ever-present dust. Some organisms working with powerful digestive acids may be able to feed directly on minerals in the rocks, leaving a fantastic Martian sculpture in their wake. If in the thin Martian air there are creatures that fly, their wings of necessity must be 4 times as large as those on Earth. However, flight may be achieved by other means. On Mars, even as on Earth, life would surely be a competitive struggle for survival. There might be fantastic hunters who kill by concentrating the heat of the sun on their victims. Devastating creatures that envelop their quarry in shrouds of poisonous gas. Or maybe ominous ultrasonic beings who shatter their prey with high-frequency sound waves. It is possible that entirely new chemical patterns of life may have developed on Mars. Life based on the silicon atom instead of carbon would be more resistant to the extreme cold, providing a whole new range of weird forms. Feeding on the drifting sand, tall crystal spires may grow to maturity in a single day, to be shattered in a crescendo of destruction during the cold Martian night. Just as it is impossible to conceive an intelligent life totally different from our own, so we may find our Earth-trained minds unable to comprehend the weird phenomena that could exist on this strange new planet. For the past half-century, the intriguing possibility of traveling to Mars in a spaceship has challenged the imagination of many men. Rocket ships of all sizes and shapes have been designed, but most of them rely on an enormous consumption of chemical fuel to escape the pull of the Earth's gravity. A spaceship using an electromagnetic drive to neutralize gravity is the obvious answer, but such a device is still a dream for the future. However, at the present time, an atomic-powered spaceship has been suggested by a leading scientist in the rocket and guided missile field, Dr. Ernst Stuhlinger, who for some years has been working closely with the rocket engineer Dr. Werner von Braun. This atomic electric spaceship features a revolutionary new principle that will make possible the long trip to Mars with only a small expenditure of fuel. Parts for the spaceship will be brought up to an orbit by conventional chemical fuel rockets. It will then be assembled in the vacuum of space. This unusual ship will be 500 feet across and will carry a small landing craft for the final descent to the Martian surface. Located at the bottom is a small atomic reactor which furnishes a continuous supply of heat. This heat turns silicon oil into steam. After rising up a central pipe, the steam drives a turbo generator which produces electricity to run the ship. The steam is condensed in a giant circular cooler and used over and over again. In the thrust chamber, a platinum grid is electrically charged. The metallic element cesium is vaporized and blown through the white-hot grid. This ionizes the cesium atoms, and they are then electrically blasted out into space at the rate of billions per second. This thrust pushes the ship in the opposite direction. The atomic electric spaceship can operate continuously for a period of years. At the top of the ship, away from the dangerous atomic reactor, is cargo space and quarters for a crew of 20 men. Mounted outside on the thrust chamber assembly is the auxiliary landing craft. When our ship reaches Mars, the landing craft will be released, carrying men and supplies to the planet's surface. A drag chute will gradually slow the landing craft as it streaks into the Martian atmosphere. A few seconds before touching down, the main rocket motors will be fired and the craft will land gently on its nose. Later, the exploration party can return to the mothership by blasting off in the tail section of the landing craft. Here is the plan for our trip to Mars. It will take 13 months and 6 days. Starting 1,000 miles above the Earth, the spaceship will slowly accelerate for 4 months before escaping the Earth's gravity. For the next 7 months, the ship will follow a curved path, finally entering the gravitational field of Mars. An additional 2 months will be spent spiraling into a circular orbit 620 miles above the Martian surface. Here at the space station, our journey begins. The expedition is comprised of 6 ships. Time, a few minutes before departure. Final checks are being completed. At 0 hour, the thrust chambers are fired. We are underway. Our fleet climbs beyond the space station, beginning its outward spiral around the Earth. The speed is increasing steadily. After 4 months and 17 days, 850,000 miles out, the expedition finally escapes the Earth's gravity. At 6 months, 14 days, our speed has increased to 75,000 miles per hour. Mars is steadily increasing in size. The halfway point has been reached. The thrust chambers are reversed. Deceleration begins. The Earth grows smaller. At 7 months, 24 days, crew members witness a spectacular passage of the Earth across the face of the sun. Three months later, the expedition is 700,000 miles above Mars, and the 45-day spiral in toward the planet is begun. Now, for the first time, the tiny Martian moons Deimos and Phobos are visible to the unaided eye. As we move to within 4,000 miles of Mars, we get a close-up view of the moon Phobos. After 13 months and 6 days, our voyage to Mars is finally completed. The ships are orbiting 620 miles above the surface of the planet. Before exploration begins, test missiles are fired to sample the strange new atmosphere. Now the first landing craft is moved into position to attempt the hazardous 600-mile drop to the Martian surface. This is a crucial moment. When Earthman finally walks upon the sands of Mars, what will confront him in this mysterious new world? Will any of his conceptions of strange and exotic Martian life prove to be true? Will he find the remains of a long-dead civilization? Or will the more conservative opinions of present-day science be borne out with the discovery of a cold and barren planet where only a low form of vegetable life struggles to survive? These questions will be answered by our space pioneers of the future. In solving the enigma of the red planet Mars, man may find a key that opens the first small door to the universe. Carried forward on the wings of modern science, man in the years that follow may discover the miracle of life as it exists in all its countless forms throughout an infinite creation.
Next week, we'll tell you the story of the Horse of the West. Rugged, intelligent, and highly trained, the hard-working quarter horse has been and still is a prime factor in the growth of our great Western cattle empire. And his bloodlines are guarded as carefully as those of the most prized thoroughbred. Our program next week tells you this exciting story.
Next week, from Frontierland, Walt Disney brings you a stirring saga, The Horse of the West, with Rex Allen as your storyteller, revealing for the first time the dramatic, authentic story of the most famous cattle empires of the West, of California, Arizona, Texas. For the first time, you'll visit the renowned Wagner Remuda and the fabulous King Ranch. For the first time, you'll actually see what the cowboy and his horse are like as you live their real-life adventures on the open range. You'll meet the lovely, versatile, talented Elena Vasquez, a name that is legend in California ranching history. Here in this robust land throughout the years, men have dedicated themselves to the breeding of greatness in horse. Their endless studies, their care and affection have developed the regal bloodlines of the quarter horse, the aristocrat of the cattle country. Sturdy of muscle, incredible stamina, speed of the wind, magnificent of heart and spirit, and gifted with just plain cow sense. Against this sweeping panorama of romance and adventure, of horses and men, moves the poignant and dramatic story of the little filly, Bay Lady, last of her bloodline of famed quarter horses.
Miss Vasquez, I guess you've hit a soft spot in me, but I'm gonna let you have that filly.
Do you mean it?
We'll wean her in about 6 months, and I'll ship her out to you.
You'll never regret it.
Your emotions will be stirred by the tragedy that comes to the little filly when her life has just begun. You'll surrender your heart to the lame white work mare who gave her foster motherhood. You'll respond to the swift-moving drama when the caprice of fate passes Bay Lady from one to another, yet never losing her proud heritage. Yes, Bay Lady was truly a child of chance. No one can remain untouched by the suspense-filled moments when Bay Lady and her firstborn are trapped in the mountain fastness, alone, helpless, with danger closing in. Be with us next week in Frontierland to experience one of Disneyland's great thrills and adventure in Walt Disney's The Horse of the West. Coming to motion picture theaters soon, Old Yeller, a rare entertainment experience. From the deeply moving story of Fred Gibson's best-selling novel comes a new Walt Disney motion picture, sure to touch the hearts of everyone, everywhere. Old Yeller, the thrilling story of a remarkable Texas family and an old Yeller dog who made a habit of saving their lives. Old Yeller, co-starring Dorothy McGuire and Fess Parker. And Old Yeller himself, friend when he wanted to be, fighting fool when he had to be. Walt Disney's dramatic new movie, Old Yeller, coming to motion picture theaters soon. This has been an ABC Television Network film presentation.